The moment replays in my mind like a horror film stuck on loop. The crystal wine glass catching the light from our decorated tree, Sarah's perfectly manicured hand hovering over it, the small white pill dissolving into the deep red Cabernet. And her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, scanning the room to make sure no one was watching, but I was watching. My name is David Morrison, and I am about to tell you how one Christmas dinner destroyed my family and exposed a conspiracy that had been festering in my own home for over 3 years. This isn't a story about holiday cheer or family unity. This is a story about betrayal, greed, and how far people will go to get what they want. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was December 23rd, 2023. My wife Margaret and I had been married for 37 years. We'd built a good life together. I'd worked as a senior architect at Morrison & Associates, a firm I'd founded from nothing. Margaret had been a beloved elementary school teacher before retiring 5 years earlier. We had one son, Michael, who at 32 years old was supposed to be the pride of our lives. He married Sarah Whitmore 4 years ago, and from the moment I met her, something felt off. I know what you're thinking. The classic story of a father who doesn't think anyone is good enough for his son. But this wasn't about that. This was about instinct. About the way she looked at our house during her first visit, mentally cataloging every piece of furniture, every painting, every indicator of wealth. The way she asked pointed questions about Margaret's health, about our estate planning, about whether we'd updated our will recently. Margaret thought I was being paranoid. Michael accused me of being impossible to please. But I've lived 59 years on this planet, and I've learned to trust my gut. Sarah was playing a long game, and I just couldn't figure out what it was. Until that Christmas party. We'd invited the whole family over. Michael and Sarah, of course. My younger brother Thomas and his wife Rita. Margaret's sister Eleanor and her husband Frank. And our oldest friends, the Hendersons, who'd been part of our lives since college. 12 people total, gathered in our home for what should have been a celebration. Margaret had been tired lately, more tired than usual. She'd been seeing Dr. Patterson about it for months. Fatigue, occasional confusion, headaches that came and went without warning. Patterson had run tests but kept coming back with the same diagnosis: stress and early signs of age-related cognitive decline. Nothing serious, he said. Just part of getting older. But Margaret was only 61. She ran 5 miles 3 times a week. She volunteered at the library. She had the energy of someone 20 years younger, or at least she used to. This sudden decline had started about 8 months ago, and it had been getting progressively worse. I'd started to wonder if something else was going on. The party began normally enough. Champagne and appetizers in the living room. Margaret had outdone herself with the decorations. White lights wrapped around the banister. Garland draped over every doorway. The 14-foot Fraser fir we'd picked out together standing proud in the corner, covered in ornaments collected over nearly 4 decades of marriage. Sarah arrived wearing a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She kissed Margaret on the cheek with that practiced warmth that always felt just a degree too cold. Michael looked uncomfortable, the way he'd been looking for months now. There was something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Dinner was set for 7:30. Margaret had prepared her famous roasted lamb with herb crust, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon, and her grandmother's recipe for Yorkshire pudding. The dining room table looked like something from a magazine spread. China that had been in Margaret's family for generations. Crystal glasses that caught and refracted the candlelight. Everything perfect. We were in the living room about 20 minutes before dinner when I went to refresh my scotch at the bar cart. That's when I saw it happen. Margaret had set down her wine glass on the side table near the fireplace. She'd excused herself to check on something in the kitchen. The room was full of conversation and laughter. Thomas was telling some story about a disastrous client meeting. Everyone was distracted, their attention pulled toward his animated gestures and booming voice. Everyone except Sarah. I watched her separate from Michael's side. She moved with purpose but casually, the way someone does when they're trying not to draw attention. She reached into the small designer clutch hanging from her shoulder. Her hand emerged with something small and white pinched between her thumb and forefinger. A pill. She glanced around the room with practiced efficiency. Her eyes passed right over me. But I was partially hidden by the tall bookshelf, standing at the bar cart in the shadows. She didn't register me as a threat, and she dropped the pill into Margaret's wine. I watched it sink beneath the surface, fizzing slightly as it dissolved. Sarah used the tip of her finger to swirl the glass gently, helping it along. The whole thing took maybe 10 seconds. Then she stepped away, returned to Michael's side, and continued her conversation as if nothing had happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands trembled as I set down the Scotch bottle. 100 thoughts crashed through my mind at once. What was in that pill? How long had this been going on? Was this why Margaret had been sick? And the worst thought of all, was my own son involved? I had to think fast. Margaret would return any moment and drink that wine. Whatever was in that glass could hurt her, could make her sicker, could be part of whatever had been slowly destroying her health for the past 8 months. I moved before I could overthink it. I walked toward the fireplace, deliberately bumping into Eleanor's husband Frank along the way. I apologized loudly, making a small scene, drawing everyone's attention for just a moment. In that moment, I reached down and grabbed Margaret's wine glass. Then I grabbed Sarah's identical glass from where she'd left it on the piano. I switched them. The whole exchange took 3 seconds, maybe 4. When everyone turned back to their conversations, I'd already moved away, back toward the bar cart. Margaret's contaminated wine now in my hand. I poured it into the decorative plant by the window when no one was looking. The white gardenia Margaret loved so much. I made a mental note to replace it before she noticed it dying. My pulse was racing. I felt like I might vomit. But I kept my face neutral, kept my hands steady. I had to see this through. Margaret returned from the kitchen, picked up what she thought was her glass, the one I'd replaced with Sarah's clean wine, and took a sip. She smiled and rejoined Eleanor's conversation about their upcoming book club meeting. Sarah didn't touch her wine for another 10 minutes. When she finally reached for it, for the glass that now contained whatever drug she'd meant for Margaret, I watched her like a hawk. She raised it to her lips, took a small sip, then another. I waited for something to happen, for her to realize the taste was off, to notice something wrong. But she just continued talking, continued smiling, continued playing the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. 15 minutes later, I noticed the first change. Sarah's words began to slur just slightly. She touched her forehead, a small gesture of confusion. Michael asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, just a little warm. The conversation continued. By the time we sat down for dinner, Sarah was having trouble keeping her eyes focused. She kept blinking slowly, like she was fighting to stay awake. Margaret noticed and asked if she was feeling all right. Sarah insisted she was just tired, that she and Michael had been working long hours. But I saw the panic starting to creep into her eyes, the realization that something was very wrong. Michael put his hand on her shoulder, concern etched across his face. He suggested she go lie down upstairs. Sarah tried to stand and nearly fell. Michael caught her, and I saw a real fear in his expression. Whatever he knew or didn't know about Sarah's plan, he clearly hadn't expected this. That's when Sarah looked directly at me. Our eyes met across the table, and in that moment, she knew. She knew that I knew. She knew that I had switched the glasses. The confusion in her eyes hardened into something else. Recognition, then terror. She tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out right. Her tongue wasn't cooperating anymore. Whatever she'd put in that wine was strong, and it was working fast. Michael helped her to the downstairs guest room. Margaret followed, worried, maternal instincts kicking in despite everything. Eleanor and Rita exchanged concerned glances. Thomas suggested maybe we should call a doctor. I said we should wait a few minutes, see if she just needed rest. But I pulled out my phone and quietly texted our family doctor, Jonathan Patterson, who I'd known for 20 years. I told him it was urgent, that I needed to see him first thing tomorrow morning, that it was about Margaret's mysterious illness. He replied within minutes. His office, 9 a.m., he'd make time. Sarah ended up staying in that guest room for the next 2 hours, drifting in and out of consciousness. Michael sat with her the whole time, holding her hand, looking more confused and frightened than I'd ever seen him. The party dissolved into awkward concern. People didn't know whether to leave or stay. Eventually, most of them made polite excuses and headed home. By 10 p.m. it was just us, me, Margaret, Michael, and Sarah passed out in the guest room. That's when I decided it was time to have a conversation with my son. I found him sitting on the edge of the guest bed, watching Sarah sleep off whatever drug she'd intended for his mother. His face was pale. His hands shook slightly. I closed the door behind me. "Michael," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Dad, I don't know what's wrong with her. She's never been like this before. She barely drinks. I don't understand." I pulled a chair over and sat down across from him. Then I told him what I'd seen. I told him about the pill, about the switch, about how I'd been watching his wife poison my wife for God knows how long. The color drained completely from his face. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not possible. Dad, you're wrong. You have to be wrong," but I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to believe I was wrong, but some part of him had suspected something too. Some part of him had seen the cracks in Sarah's perfect facade. I asked him point blank, "Did you know?" He shook his head violently. "No. I swear to God, no." "But Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago." And that's when my son broke down and told me everything. 6 months ago, Michael had discovered that Sarah had taken out a life insurance policy on Margaret, $2 million. She'd forged Margaret's signature on the paperwork. She'd listed herself as the beneficiary. Michael had found the documents hidden in Sarah's desk drawer when he was looking for stamps. When he confronted her about it, Sarah had cried. She'd said it was a mistake, that she'd been trying to help by organizing our family's financial documents. She'd insisted she would cancel the policy immediately. She'd begged him not to tell us because she was embarrassed about overstepping. And Michael, my son, who'd always wanted to believe the best in people, had believed her. But she never canceled that policy. Michael had checked last week. It was still active. And that's when he started to really worry. That's when he started watching her more carefully. That's when he noticed the small pill bottles hidden in her purse, the ones she said were just vitamins or supplements. He'd been gathering evidence, he told me. He'd been trying to figure out what to do. He'd been terrified that if he was wrong, if he accused her of something so horrible and was mistaken, it would destroy their marriage. But in his heart, he'd known something was deeply wrong. I sat there listening to my son's confession, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. Rage at Sarah for what she'd done. Rage at Michael for not coming to me sooner, but also heartbreak for the position she'd put him in, for the way she'd manipulated his love and trust. I told him we needed to get Margaret to a real specialist, someone who could test her for long-term poisoning. I told him that tonight, Sarah would stay in that guest room where I could watch her. And tomorrow, we would end this. Michael nodded slowly, and he asked the question I'd been dreading. What if she dies? What if whatever she took kills her? I looked at my son and told him the truth. Then she dies by her own hand, with her own weapon. And maybe that's justice. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Sarah woke up around 2 a.m. I was sitting in the chair by the door. I'd sent Michael upstairs to be with Margaret, to hold her while she slept, to guard her in case anything happened. I wanted to protect her from this knowledge as long as I could. When Sarah's eyes fluttered open, it took her a moment to focus on me. When she did, fear flooded her features. She croaked, her voice rough and dry. I can explain. I didn't say anything, just stared at her. This woman who'd tried to murder my wife, who'd been slowly poisoning her for months, who'd wormed her way into my family with nothing but greed in her heart. She tried to sit up, but the drugs were still in her system. She fell back against the pillows. "It's not what you think," she said. "Please, you have to listen to me." I leaned forward in my chair. "What is it then, Sarah? Enlighten me. Explain how putting a pill in my wife's drink isn't exactly what it looks like." Tears started streaming down her face. Calculated tears, I was sure. Every emotion Sarah displayed was calculated. "I was trying to help her," Sarah said. "Margaret's been sick. Dr. Patterson wasn't taking it seriously. I was giving her supplements, things to help with her memory and energy. I didn't want Michael to worry, so I was doing it secretly. I thought if she got better, everyone would be happy." It was a good story, almost believable, if I hadn't seen the life insurance policy. If I hadn't watched 8 months of my wife's decline, if I hadn't seen the cold calculation in Sarah's eyes as she dropped that pill into the wine. "What was in the pill, Sarah?" I asked calmly. She hesitated. "Just vitamins, B12, Dorba. Things for cognitive function." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo I'd taken earlier. While she'd been unconscious, I'd gone through her purse. I'd found the pill bottle. I'd photographed the label. Ambien, I read aloud. Prescription sleeping medication. 20 milligram tablets. Interesting vitamin choice. Her face went white. "And this," I continued, scrolling to the next photo, benzodiazepine. This one, a low-dose antipsychotic. And this one, I particularly liked this one, a medication typically used to induce memory loss in patients undergoing traumatic procedures. Sarah started crying harder. Real tears now. Tears of fear. "You've been drugging my wife for months," I said, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. "You've been making her sick, making her confused, making her seem like she's losing her mind. And you took out a $2 million life insurance policy on her. So please, Sarah, tell me again how you were just trying to help." She couldn't speak. She just sobbed into her hands. "I'll tell you what's going to happen now," I continued. "In the morning, we're going to the police. Margaret will be taken to a hospital for a full toxicology screen. Every medication in your possession will be cataloged and tested. Your forgery of Margaret's signature will be investigated. You will go to prison for a very long time." "No," Sarah gasped. "Please, no. I can't go to prison. David, please. We can work this out. I'll leave. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Just please don't call the police." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do this? We welcomed you into our family. We treated you like a daughter. What could possibly be worth murdering an innocent woman?" Sarah looked up at me, with mascara running down her face. "Because you have everything," she spat, and suddenly the facade was completely gone. The real Sarah, the one I'd always suspected was hiding beneath the surface, emerged fully. "You have this house, this life, this perfect little family. And people like me, people who grew up with nothing, we're supposed to just smile and be grateful for whatever scraps we get. I grew up in foster care," she continued, her voice bitter. "I was passed from home to home until I aged out of the system at 18. No family, no money, no opportunities. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. And then I met Michael, sweet stupid Michael, who was born with everything handed to him on a silver platter." She laughed, a harsh sound. "When I met him, I saw my way out. I saw security, stability, a family. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough when you've spent your whole life with nothing. I wanted more. I deserved more. And you and Margaret, you're old. You've had your lives. You've had your chances. Why shouldn't I have mine?" The coldness in her voice chilled me to my core. "So yes," she said defiantly, "I was going to kill her. I was going to make it look like a tragic progression of her illness. And I was going to use that insurance money to build the life I deserve. Is that what you wanted to hear?" I stood up slowly. "Thank you," I said quietly. That's when I reached into my pocket and stopped the voice recorder app on my phone. I'd been recording since the moment she woke up. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she realized what had happened. I opened the door and called for Michael. Came downstairs immediately, followed by Margaret, who I'd woken up and explained everything to while Sarah was still unconscious. My wife stood there in her bathrobe, staring at the woman who'd been trying to kill her, tears silently streaming down her face. Then I called 911. The police arrived within 15 minutes. I played them the recording, showed them the photographs of the medications. Michael provided the life insurance documents. Margaret confirmed she'd never signed anything and that she'd been mysteriously ill for months. Sarah was arrested on the spot. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, prescription drug possession without a prescription. The charges kept stacking up. As they led her out of our house in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. There was pure hatred in her eyes. "I hope you're happy," she screamed. "I hope you feel good about destroying my life." "You destroyed your own life," I said calmly. "I just made sure you didn't destroy anyone else's in the process." The next few weeks were a blur of police statements, medical appointments, and legal proceedings. Margaret was thoroughly tested and put on a detoxification protocol to clear the medications from her system. Dr. Patterson was horrified that he'd missed the signs of poisoning, though to be fair, who thinks to test for that when a patient comes in complaining of fatigue? Within 3 weeks, Margaret's symptoms started improving. Within 6 weeks, she was almost back to her old self. The energy returned. The mental fog lifted. She started running again, volunteering again, living again. Michael took it hard. He blamed himself for not seeing the signs sooner, for not protecting his mother. He filed for divorce immediately, but the guilt ate him. We spent a lot of time talking, a lot of time rebuilding our relationship. He moved back home for a few months while he got his feet under him, Sarah went to trial 4 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The recording I'd made was particularly damning. Her lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, tried to paint her as a victim of her traumatic childhood, but the jury wasn't buying it. She was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. She'll be eligible for parole after serving 17. At the sentencing, she was given the opportunity to make a statement. She stood up, looked directly at Margaret, and said nothing. She just stared with those cold eyes until the bailiff had to prompt her to sit back down. Margaret was terrified of her right, up until the moment they led her away. Now it's been almost a year since that Christmas party. We didn't celebrate the holidays at all last year. Couldn't bring ourselves to do it. Too many bad memories. But Margaret says she wants to try again this year. Small gathering, just Thomas and Rita, Eleanor and Frank, the Hendersons. No one new. Just the people we know we can trust. Michael is dating someone new now. Teacher he met through Margaret's library volunteer work. She's kind, genuine, from a stable family. We like her. We've all learned to be more cautious, to pay attention to the warning signs we might have missed before. But we've also learned something else. We've learned how fragile safety is, how quickly trust can be weaponized, how the people we invite into our homes and hearts can harbor the darkest intentions. I think about that night constantly. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't been standing at that bar cart, if I hadn't seen Sarah drop that pill into Margaret's wine, if I hadn't trusted my instincts and made the switch. Margaret would be dead by now, I'm certain of it. Sarah was patient, she was methodical. She would have slowly increased the dosages, made Margaret sicker and sicker, until her body finally gave out. And everyone would have thought it was just a tragic illness, just the sad reality of getting older. No one would have suspected murder. That's the thing about people like Sarah. They're good at hiding in plain sight. They're good at playing roles, at saying the right things, and making you believe there's something they're not. They study you, learn your weaknesses, find the gaps in your defenses. They strike when you least expect it. The worst part, the part that still keeps me up some nights, is wondering how many other families this has happened to. How many unexplained illnesses, how many mysterious deaths. How many Sarahs are out there right now, slowly poisoning the people who trust them. How many people didn't have someone standing at the bar cart, watching at the exact right moment. I saved Margaret's life that night. But I can't save everyone. None of us can. All we can do is pay attention, trust our instincts, and remember that not everyone who smiles at you across the dinner table has your best interests at heart. Some of them are just waiting for their chance. Some of them are already dropping pills into your wine when they think no one is watching. I was watching, and that made all the difference. Last week, I got a letter. It was forwarded to me through our lawyer, part of the prison correspondence system. Sarah had written it from her cell at the Women's Correctional Facility upstate. I almost threw it away without opening it. Margaret told me I should. But some morbid curiosity made me tear open the envelope and unfold the single sheet of lined paper inside. The letter was short. It's written in neat, careful handwriting that somehow made it more disturbing. David, it read, "You think you won? You think you saved Margaret and destroyed me? But you need to understand something. I'm not special, not unique. There are thousands of women like me out there, women who grew up with nothing, who learned to survive by any means necessary. And we're patient, we're smart. We know how to play the long game. You got lucky? You happen to be in the right place at the right moment? But most people aren't that lucky. And most people trust too easily. Most people don't see what's happening until it's too late. So congratulations on your victory. Enjoy your perfect life, with your perfect wife, in your perfect house. But remember this. Not everyone is as fortunate as you were. Not everyone has someone watching. Sleep well, Sarah." I burned that letter in the fireplace that same night. I didn't tell Margaret about it. I didn't tell Michael. There was no point in giving Sarah's words more power than they deserved. But I can't deny that she was right about one thing. I was lucky. Lucky to be at that bar cart. Lucky to have trusted my instincts. Lucky to have acted fast enough. Not everyone is that lucky. I'm telling you this story now, sharing what happened to us because I want people to understand something crucial. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like a daughter-in-law in a red dress, smiling at your Christmas party, kissing your wife on the cheek while planning her murder. Pay attention to the people around you. Trust your instincts when something feels off. Don't ignore the warning signs because you want to believe the best in people. Sometimes the best in people doesn't exist. Sometimes what exists beneath the surface is something dark and calculating and willing to do anything to get what it wants. I saved Margaret because I was paying attention. I saw what Sarah put in my wife's drink at Christmas, and I made a choice in that moment that changed everything. But here's what haunts me most of all. For 8 months before that night, I wasn't paying attention. For 8 months, Sarah was poisoning my wife right under my nose, and I didn't see it. I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't act on it. I let it continue because I didn't want to believe my own son's wife could be capable of something so horrible, and Margaret suffered for those 8 months. She felt herself getting weaker, getting confused, losing pieces of herself. She went to doctors who couldn't find anything wrong. She probably wondered if she was going crazy, if she was imagining her own decline. All because I didn't trust my instincts sooner. All because I gave Sarah the benefit of the doubt she never deserved. That's my burden to carry now. The knowledge that I could have stopped this months earlier, if I'd just been brave enough to confront what I suspected. The knowledge that my wife suffered unnecessarily because I was too polite, too accommodating, too willing to keep the peace. Never again. Now I watch everyone. I pay attention to details. I trust my gut. And when something feels wrong, I act on it immediately. Consequences be damned. Because I learned the hard way that being right about someone's bad intentions is better than being wrong about their good ones. That protecting the people you love is more important than maintaining comfortable social relationships. That sometimes you have to be willing to look like the paranoid, suspicious bad guy in order to keep the people you love safe. I saw what my daughter-in-law put in my wife's drink at Christmas, because I was watching, because I acted, because I trusted what I knew to be true. Even when it seemed impossible, my wife is still alive today. She's in the kitchen right now, humming while she prepares dinner. The same kitchen where she made that Christmas feast last year, unaware that someone at the table was slowly killing her. The same kitchen where she'll make our Christmas dinner this year, surrounded only by people we know we can trust. I can hear her laughing at something on the radio, that laugh that I almost lost forever, that laugh that Sarah tried to silence. And I'm grateful. Grateful for that moment at the bar cart. Grateful that I saw what I saw. Grateful that I had the presence of mind to act quickly enough. But I'm also changed. We're all changed. The innocence of assuming people are good until proven otherwise is gone. The comfort of believing family means safety is shattered. The peace of mind that comes with trust has been replaced by vigilance. That's what Sarah took from us, even though she failed in her ultimate goal. She took our ability to relax, to trust easily, to believe the best in people. She took the version of our family that existed before that Christmas party and replaced it with this new, warier, more suspicious version. But we're alive. We're together. We're stronger for what we survived. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah thinks about that night from her prison cell. If she replays the moment she took that sip of wine and realized something was wrong, she's figured out the exact second where her plan fell apart. She understands that her downfall came from the simple fact that someone was watching when she thought she was invisible. I hope she does think about it. I hope it haunts her the way her actions haunt us. I hope she lies awake at night knowing that she came so close, that she was so careful for so long, and that one moment of bad luck destroyed everything, because that's all it takes. One person paying attention. One person brave enough to act. One person willing to trust what they see, even when it seems impossible. I was that person for Margaret. I saw what Sarah put in her drink, and I made sure she never got the chance to finish what she started. Now I'm telling you this story in the hope that maybe, somewhere, someone else will pay attention too. Someone else will trust their instincts. Someone else will act quickly enough to save the person they love. Because Sarah was right about one thing. There are more people like her out there. More people willing to hurt others for their own gain. More people dropping pills into drinks when they think no one is watching. But maybe, if enough people hear this story, more of us will be watching. More of us will be ready to act. More of us will protect the people we love before it's too late. That Christmas party changed my life. It exposed the monster living in my home. It showed me how close we came to losing everything. But it also taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Always watch. Always pay attention. Always trust your instincts, because you never know when you might be the only person standing between someone you love and someone who wants them dead. I saw what my daughter-in-law put in my wife's drink at Christmas. And because I saw it, Because I acted on it, my wife is still here. The question is, what would you have done? Would you have noticed? Would you have acted? Would you have been brave enough to trust what you saw, even if it meant destroying your family in the process? I hope you never have to find out. But if you do, I hope you remember this story. Hope you remember that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones sitting across from you at dinner, smiling while they plan your destruction. Watch them. Trust yourself and act quickly, because by the time you're certain, it might already be too late.